This one on dummies, basically you know them, the dummy it and dummy there, right? It's basically dealing with them. uh, we already seen the be verb. We have seen be verb with the passive, and we saw that a be verb takes a VP complement which has the form passive. But be verb also occurs in some other contexts. Look at the sentences given there. The contexts are like Pat is on the roof. Pat is the captain of the team. Pat is fond of Chris. Pat is singing the blues. Uh, that is, you can have an adjective. You can have a preposition phrase. You can have a noun phrase. You can also have an adjective phrase. Then you also have a present participle form. But you can never have a finite form. Remember, this is a finite verb you cannot have. So what we see is be verb can not only have a VP with a passive form but also other kinds of complements. That is what we need to look at now. So only some verb forms can head a VP complement of B, and that not all adjectives can head AP complements of B. See, no, fond is adjective, it can, but you cannot have other kinds of adjectives. Okay, those which are only predicative can occur. In fact, you know there are adjectives have two kinds of functions: attributive function, predicative function. Fond has a predicative function, but if there is an adjective like alarm, it cannot have a predicative function. So you cannot use a predicative, a non-predicative function adjective as a complement of the verb be. Then the traditional name which is given to the complements which occur after be are called predicatives. In fact, you'll find in traditional grammars you call them predicative. So what we do is all those which follow will take a binary feature, either plus predicative or minus predicate, predicate plus, predicate minus. So both have head values of type adjective. So adjective head value will be adjective only, but some of them will have plus predicate and some of them minus predicate. So minus predicate is something which is not predicative, which can be attributive adjectives too. So likewise, we can also say passives, present participles, and past participles will have a plus predicative, but other forms will have a minus predicative. So likes the predictive is doesn't have a plus predicative form, whereas singing the blues has a plus predicate form, right? So if you use plus predicate plus and predicate minus, predicate as the feature basically, then you have two binary features and then two features plus or minus, and only those with plus predicate value will occur after the be. If we take that into consideration, then we can see that the lexical entry of B will be like this, where B belongs to B lexeme. It's B lexeme, and B lexeme means basically it's a verbal lexeme, and all lexemes will have argument structure. Remember that is so this is inherited from there, and the argument structure of B will have an non-subject. Subject is this, right? Specify the non-subject will have a predicate plus value. This is important. That's what we are saying, right? And whatever the specifier of this predicate will be the specifier of the main verb be. So when you're saying that, when you say Pat is on the roof is plus predicate, and it has a specifier. That specifier is identical with Pat, right? Similarly, the captain of the team has a specifier which is identical with Pat. Fond of also again has, right? So when you say fond of, see, you can see fond of is a adjective which needs two arguments. If you look at your basic issues in syntax, what we learn, fond of can have two arguments, and one of them is someone who is fond of something, right? So that someone, something, or someone. So that is the specifier. That specifier is identical with this. In GB syntax, what happens is Pat is generated with fond of Chris, and that is a small clause. Pat fond of Chris, Pat on the roof, or Pat the captain of the team is a small clause, and Pat raises in your GB syntax, right? Even if Pat, so that's what happens. But here, what we are doing is because we don't have movement in HPage, there is no movement, so the specifier of predicate plus argument is same as this. So without movement we are able to get what is required. And index of B, in fact whatever we have given for passive remains the same. Okay, we are not doing that, we are not giving anything. So whatever semantics value the verbal or predicate the argument has, the same value which the semantics of B, because B doesn't contribute any semantics as such, so it takes from its argument. So with this, now we are not saying VP passive, right? VP passive is not necessary, because with this what happens, this can accommodate prepositional phrases, VP passives, VP participles, adjective phrases, noun phrases, whatever has predicate plus value, right? So this is the final entry for B. There is a third B which we see, or now second B, because first passive B and the other B we have put them together. But there is another B now. It's in a different context. Now there is a unicorn in the garden. There were many people fond of Pat. There are people looking through the window. There was a felon elected to the city council. When you look at them, what you see is there is the subject there is a dummy there. It's a non-differential subject. It doesn't refer to anything, right? So it's a dummy referential, dummy subject. And also you see after the be verb there is an argument, NP, and then you have a predicate plus phrase, in the garden, fond of Pat, looking through the window, right? And elected to the council. Yeah, so what we see is there is a non-differential subject, there's a noun phrase after the be verb, and then a predicate plus phrase following that NP. So this B form requires a restriction on its subject. So this B says it cannot take a referential subject, it takes only non-differential subject. Again, that too it takes only there, it doesn't take any other dummy, right? You cannot say it is a unicorn in the garden. You can only say there is a unicorn in the garden. So it is such a restriction that the verb be needs only the word there. So what we do is we introduce, as we did the feature form, we introduce the feature form in the case of passive predicate. We have already done in the case of passive and predicate marking preposition. We also use the same here with the be verb too. How? So look at this. This is a B like C, and we are saying it needs a subject, it needs a noun phrase, which is a form there. Remember, for prepositions we use particularly in passives by preposition, form by. Similarly we are doing that. So there is only one kind, so that's why we are giving this, one of its kind. So form there as the subject, and then the second NP is here, and third one is a predicate plus. And remember, the third argument, the last one, has a specifier which is identical with the second one. That is, again we are creating a small clause as we did earlier. There is a unicorn in the garden. A unicorn in the garden is the small clause. Many people fond of Pat, are people looking through the window, a felon elected to the city council. These are all small clauses, right? Though we are not calling them small clauses, we are creating small clauses by saying the specifier of the predicate plus argument is identical with the NP after the be verb. So the restriction is very clear now. the restriction of the subject is non-referential subject, then the specifier of the predicate plus argument is this is the this is the restriction, and then the semantics doesn't change basically. Semantics, what are we saying? Semantics, index 4, whatever semantics you have for the predicate plus value of argument is the same. So that's what you see when you say in the garden, and in the garden is has a specifier which is identical to a unicorn. So a unicorn in the garden, that is the semantics of this. That is same as the entire sentence, there is a unicorn in the garden. So that's why the index value is, and index value is same for both. And this the in fact the by making the specifier in this identical, we are also saying the semantics or restriction values are put together. That is the restriction of value of this and restriction value of this, the entire argument are put together. That's what that also it means the same, right? So that is it's basically a small clause. Whatever happens in a small clause is happening here. This. Okay. So now we have seen that non-differential subject there with occurring with the be verb, existential be. What is it actually? We are trying to look at that. When you look at existential there, the only word with form there, that's the only word in the entire language now, right? It is idiosyncratic basically, and all other NPs except there, that is non-dummy NPs, proper nouns, pronouns, phrases headed by common nouns, like etc., they all have form none. Okay, they all have form none. So we can actually form none can be introduced at a noun lexeme level. We don't need to say for every noun. So as a default asset with the type noun lexeme, we'll say form none, and the word there which comes with form there will override that, right? So only noun lexeme, at the noun lexeme level we say form none, so that all other proper nouns, pronouns, etc. will have form none automatically. Then a pronoun with no referential function, existential there, it's a pronoun and it doesn't have any reference, but all the other pronouns we have reference, he, she, it, or I, or whatever, they, and it does not contribute to the meaning of the sentence in which it occurs. Because it doesn't contribute to the meaning, whatever meaning the other rest of the things, rest of the arguments convey, has to be taken with this, right? That's what it means basically. The head value noun, the head value is form of the existence there is noun. How do you know that it is exist? Because it is a pronoun lexeme, it inherits from noun lexeme, right? So head value is noun because it's a pronoun lexeme, its super type is noun lexeme, so it inherits noun value. And what is the argument structure? The argument structure for this is empty, because all pronoun lexemes have empty argument structure, so existential there will not have any argument structure. And AGR specification, it is underspecified for noun. It is underspecified for noun because you can have both singular and plural. That's what we have seen in the examples. There is and there were, or there are, right? So the is, if you are trying to get agreement because of our agreement principles, so is has to take agreement with this, though there has to be singular here it has to be plural, right? So we make it underspecified, age expression underspecified number, because the word there can be plural too. And the restriction value is empty list because it doesn't contribute any meaning, so it no contribution to the restriction list. Mode and index values are none because no referential potential or no referential index, right? It doesn't have any reference. So these two are none. Restriction list is empty. Form is only there. So this is the basic restriction. All other things which are will be inherited because it's a pronoun lexeme. Its supertype is noun lexeme, so it belongs to noun. Head value is noun, right? That we don't need to say. And all pronoun lexemes will not have any argument structure, so its argument structure will be empty. We are not saying that because we don't need to say it will automatically inherit from its supertypes. So okay, yeah, is this clear now? So here whatever is the subject there is of this value, this value, that's what we are saying. It doesn't contribute any meaning. Next is actually a very important rule which we have seen in syntax, extraposition. Look at, I've taken two examples. That India lost the series to Australia sucks. It sucks that India lost the series to Australia. That dogs bark annoys people. It annoys people that dogs bark. Both the sentences have the same meaning. A and B have the same meaning, but the structure is different. The structure is different in a way that in the A sentences you have that clause as a subject, and in B sentences you have dummy it as a subject, and that clause has gone and taken a new position. That's why it is called extraposition in syntax. Though we don't call it extraposition as such here, it's extraposition as a construction we are looking at it. Okay. So, and this process is very productive because in English you see many verbs taking such a process. Many verbs we take to these two types of sentences, with the sentence with the clause as the subject and it as the dummy subject, without any change in meaning. And whenever you see an extraposition construction, you see again a non-referential it, like there as a subject, and that clause at the end. And the dummy it is like there because it doesn't have any list in its restriction, and it also doesn't have any value for index, so none value for index, and it's very restricted in its distribution, like there. Okay, so the lexical entry for it will be like this: it as a pronoun lexeme with the form it value. Because the pronoun lexeme, its head value will be noun, because super type of pronoun lexeme is non lexeme. And AGR number singular, agreement dummy it takes only singular, unlike the word there can take both, so that's why we have underspecified agreement for there. And also it is a third person singular, third person, right? It's by default again, so it's also third person by default, inheritance from the type noun lexeme, but that by default, yeah. So yes, so index and mode values are none, restriction is empty, number is singular, form it, head value is noun. That's right. That is the dummy it. So dummy it and dummy there. Now once we see that extraposition sentences, we see that it is the subject, and you have the what you call the clause as the complement. Now how do we relate these two? We need to relate these two by some kind of rule. We had extraposition rule in syntax, but how do we relate these two kinds of sentences in HPSC? Extraposition. What did I do? Yeah, we have done this. Yeah, we have done that. Okay, now we know that verbs like guess, know, promise, etc., like verbs of saying and all those verbs, they take that clause as their complements. Okay, in fact, if you look at the subcategorization of verbs, there are certain words which take only that clauses, and some verbs take interrogative clauses, WH clauses. Some verbs take only infinitival clauses. Right? We have learned that. So here, these verbs take that clause as their complements, and those that clauses will have complementizer that, but sometimes where they in fact they don't need, that is the verb, the complement is that is optional. So if you say John says that he loves Mary, or John says he loves Mary, that is an optional complementizer. Assume that. So that, what is, how do you characterize that? So assume that that has a form feature with a value of finite. We say that has a finite feature. Then the verbs mentioned above can have the argument structure as follows. If we say the word that has a form feature finite, then that means that form should be obtained through head feature principle, and if that is the word that takes some kind of complement which will also be finite, etc., right? So the argument structure of the word that will be this. Okay, NP, and then the second argument is form finite, specifier null, and complements null. This is your S. If you remember, your saturated VP is nothing but a sentence. Saturated VP meaning both the specifier and comps values become null, right? And that's an independent sentence. So this is an S now. Okay, that is the second argument of that. Okay. On the other hand, in the sentence, now that is optional in when that clause is a complement, but that is not optional. The complement is that is not optional when that clause occurs as a subject. Look at this: dogs bark annoys everybody. You cannot have a sentence without that here. You need a complement as that, right? So if you are taking a verb like annoy, which takes that clause as its subject, will have an argument structure like this. Okay, the argument structure for a verb like annoy will have a subject, and these are the other arguments. This is the first argument. So the first arguments have a complementizer of the form finite. Okay, this is the restriction, this is the constraint now, right? The word annoy will have a subject which has to have head value of complementizer with form finite value, whereas the verbs like know, promise, remember, say, etc., we're saying they have a subject anyway, but the second argument, right, when you say John says, so NP is John says that, it has to be finite. We are not saying that it has to be a complementizer, right? Whereas we are saying here it has a complementizer. That's the difference. When you say we are not saying this thing, it has to be a complementizer of head value is complementizer, that means it can only be S. When we say the head value has to be a complementizer, then we are looking for a clause with a complementizer. That means it's a CP we are looking for. We are not using CP as such in HPSC, but that's what we are looking for. Okay, so NI will have this argument structure. So complementizer, what is that complementizer? When using complementizer, what is it? It has to have a feature structure, and what kind of values does it take, what kind of constraints does it have. So we know, one thing we know is that the word that is a finite, it takes finite clause. Okay, but that should belong to some supertype, right? It belongs to complex scene, right? That lexeme belongs to a complexeme, a complementizer lexeme, because that is not the only complementizer. There are other complementizers. So it should belong to a complementizer lexeme. What is that complementizer lexeme? Complementizer lexeme will have such constraints, the constraints on this complementizer lexeme. Complementizer lexeme will have head value of complementizer and a case of nominative and accusative, and form identical with the form of the non-subject head value, right? That is argument structure, second argument, not the first one, not the specified argument, non-subject, right? Complement argument. So the form value of this and this are the same, and index value is the same. So what does it mean? What do we mean by all these? When we say first, let's say the last argument of the complementizer lexeme, there are two arguments. First argument is this, second argument is this. This is the last argument. Its index value is this. Okay, its index value is same as semantics. That is, whatever the second argument's index value, semantics, is same as the complementizer lexeme's index. So semantics is the same. That is, when I said that he loves Mary, John says that he loves Mary. He loves Mary's semantics index is same as that semantics index. The word that. That's what this means. Okay, and then we are also saying form, the value form 2 and form here again identical with this, identical with the last argument. Why are we saying that? The second argument, if John says that he loves Mary, what is the form of he loves Mary? Finite. The same value has to come here. So the head value of complementizer comp with the case and form value has to be finite if the last argument is also finite. If this is not finite, this is not finite. Okay, so there may be an complementizer which takes a non-finite argument, so that matches. But and the word that actually takes a finite argument, so the argument is finite and its value also has a form value also finite. Then why nominative and accusative for a complementizer lexeme? Accusative case and nominative case. We know that the that clause or the clauses basically occur as subjects and as verbs, as objects. We have seen that in the previous sentences, that India lost the series to Australia sucks. Now here the entire clause is functioning as a subject, right? So subjects will have on the argument list, if you remember our case principle, the first argument will have to be nominative, right? And all other arguments are accusative in English. So if this clause, right, this clause is in the first argument, that has to be nominative. Similarly, when I said the dogs bark annoys people, that dogs bark has to be nominative, people has to be accusative. So in order to take care of that, we are basically using these. That means if the that clause is the subject, then it will be nominative automatically. If it is an object, it is accusative automatically. This is complementizer lexeme. Remember, it's a type somewhere. And what kind of type it is? Actually, this is its super type will be constant lexeme, not inflection lexeme, because this will not take inflections. Okay, if complementizer lexeme is like this. The word that, what is its lexical entry? Its lexical entry is this. The word is that. It belongs to the type complementizer lexeme. The moment it belongs, I say it belongs to the complementizer lexeme, it inherits this case, and it also inherits form. But look at the constraint on the word that is it has to be finite. So this overrides this and says, okay, that's the only constraint we have, and all other will be inherited. Like index is inherited, right? Index is inherited, and because head value of form finite, then if it has an argument structure in it, actually that has to be finite automatically. So that lexeme has a form value finite. That is the constraint, right? If I ask you what is the constraint on the complementizer that, then you have to say this. The constraint is basically it has finite form value. How do you mention it in this feature structure? This is how you mention it in this feature structure. Okay. Lexical entry for that. What you have seen is that as a complementary lexeme is here. Now this is the constraint, but it inherits these features also, right? Some features together. This is your lexical entry, right? That as a word, actually, right? As a word, it has a comp value form finite too. Okay, they take this as a word, not as a lexeme anymore. Okay. Form finite value, and whatever argument it takes, that argument has the head value verb, right? And the specifier is also null for that argument. Mainly complement will also be null automatically because we are not giving here. And semantics index value, this is also inherited from complementizer lexeme value, right? So whatever verb the argument's index value is shared with this, and mode value is proposition. Okay, how are you getting this? When you say that he loves Mary, he loves Mary is a verb phrase with finite form value and empty specifier, empty complementizer value, and it has some semantics. The semantics is there is a love is a relationship, there's a lover I and loved J, all that relationship, and he loves Mary is a proposition. So that is here, and this just shares the index. Because it shares the index, this has the same value of whatever the sentence has. And yeah, and this inherits the finite value from its VP's value. Okay, now once it is like this, the word that has a finite value. If you take a verb like say or remember or promise, okay, they need a complement. Let's say if you say the word think, the word think has two arguments, thinker and whatever is thought. Thinker is NP, whatever is thought has to be a finite clause, right? That's what this says. So the word that inherits finiteness here, so the whole thing is finite, and it can basically be the complement of verb think, right? So once you know how this is working, let's look at the semantics. semantics of that clause, right? When you look at a sentence, sentence no, okay. Let's say there is a sentence like okay, I've been using this, so let me. Mr. John says that he loves Mary. As a sentence, what we see is that say that that he loves Mary. Ouch. That he loves Mary is embedded, right? Because it's embedded, we may think that whatever semantics which that he loves Mary has to be embedded. No, it cannot be embedded. What we do is we take the semantic value of that he loves Mary, which is added as an argument semantics value, and that John will be by using semantic inheritance principle, semantic composition principle, those two will combine. So the semantics of John, the semantics of that he loves Mary will be combined. We are not going to embed the semantics. Look at this, actually that's what this will tell you. Mode values proposition. This is basically that Fido barks annoys me. Okay, the sentence is that Fido barks annoys me. Okay, this is the sentence. You can see annoy is the relation, and if it has situation S, someone who is annoyed is J, and what is annoyed with is the annoyance T. Annoyance is a situation where there is an annoyer and there is someone who is annoyed, right? Annoyance situation. So annoyed is here. The annoyance situation is actually barking. Annoyance is due to barking. So barking is a relation where the situation is T, there's a barker. There's a barker. And who is the barker? Barker is a person, it is something which is named by relation name, is named as Fido. In any situation, in a given situation U, in any situation as U, there is something, there's an animal which is named Fido. Okay? And that is the barker. I. The situation of the Fido is different from the situation this, because Fido is not just in the barking situation, it can be in any situation. So this is different from this. Remember, don't give the same index. Whereas barking situation and annoyance situation, barking situation becomes an argument situation for annoy. That's what I was telling you here. It becomes an argument. So T is argument here. Similarly, annoyed. Who is annoyed? There is an instance of J, annoyed. The instance of J where J is a speaker. J is a speaker. He can be a speaker in any situation, not just in that situation. So he is a speaker, that is me. Okay, and when is this happening? When is this happening? Argument 1S situation. In this situation here, this is the main verb. Its situation is your S, and that is overlapped with now. When there is a time overlap on now. So there are two arguments which are talking about with time. One is S, another is now, and there is an overlap between these two. That means Now, that is S, the situation S that is annoying is happening. Okay, that's what this means. Now look at the semantics of sentence like that Fido barks annoys me. Okay, this entire thing is a proposition, and index S basically whatever situation is again we have that index S. If this sentence that Fido barks annoys me is embedded, let's say, is embedded in some other sentence. Okay, in a sentence like John says that Fido barks annoys me, something like that. John says that Fido barks annoys me, something like that. Then the situation S here, the index S, becomes an argument of that. Like situation here, barks situation has become here. Similarly, this S becomes an argument of says. Okay, is that clear? Is that clear for you all, this semantics?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, because you shouldn't get confused, because how to use this indices, this is very important in HPSC. So,
Sir, I have one doubt with the semantics.
uh,
If both annoy and barks are in simple present, wouldn't it be the same situation?
yeah, that's what is happening now. The T, the situation which is an annoys an argument, and so this is okay. If I say that Fido barked, it cannot be annoys me. It has to be annoyed me. It's a that what you call kind of tense agreement, right?
Yes, sir.
If some situation where it happens in some clause, embedded clause is past and the other one is present, in such situation you need to add a tense for the embedded clause, something else here for bark.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, now we are actually looking at extraposition. In extraposition we saw that there is a that clause as a subject that becomes a complement, and dummy it becomes a subject. We just looked at that clause, right? But how do we get the relation between these two, the A and B? We use a lexical rule. In Chomsky syntax, we had a syntactic rule, right? Syntactic rule is the entire clause moves down or moves up, whatever, right? Depending on the framework you choose, it can go up or go raise, or it is generated there itself or something, so it gets deleted. But here it's a lexical rule, but the lexical rule is not for extraposition. We are not using a syntax rule. The lexical rule is for the verb. Okay, that is a clever thing here. You have a lexeme, and a new lexeme is derived from that lexeme. Okay, and that lexeme need not, both the lexemes, derived lexeme and the lexeme, need not be verb lexemes. It can be any other lexeme. Okay, what we have seen is only extraposition with only verb lexemes, but not necessary. It can be with others also. Right, it is for example, it is easy for John to laugh. Okay, for John to laugh is easy. Here the extraposition is now is the with the adjective easy. So the lexeme need not be verb. That's what we are saying here. New derived lexemes are created from any lexeme, not just verb lexemes, as we'll see later maybe. Whose first argument is a CP. What happens is you have verb lexemes which have an argument structure. in the argument structure, the first argument is a CP. The first argument is a complementizer phrase, is a clause. Okay, all those lexemes which have CP as the first argument may undergo this rule, may undergo this lexical rule, and they derive a new lexeme. And the new derived lexeme will have a different structure. Okay, that's what we are doing now. How do you have? See, this is the one. There is a lexeme which has an argument structure in which the first argument A has a complementizer head value. This lexeme undergoes a change and a new derived lexeme is obtained with the argument structure where the A goes here and the first argument is an NP with form value it, that is dummy it. Okay, this is the lexeme. So if you take verb annoy, that Fido barks annoyed me, it needs that Fido barks me annoyed me. So that is the first argument. First argument is one is annoy, this annoy, and that Fido barks is a complementizer phrase. Me is B. Now the argument structure is changed, so it annoys me that Fido barks. Okay, so we don't need a syntactic rule. You have a lexical rule where the argument structure is restructured with the addition of dummy it. So the output lexeme always takes a dummy it as its subject and takes as a final argument whatever kind of CP was specified as the input's first argument. Input's first argument becomes the final argument. No need of a new phrase structure rule to handle extraposition. If you have a lexical rule, that's enough. And any word formed from the lexeme outputs of this rule is one of the general patterns already provided by our existing grammar rules. We also already have existing grammar rules which have like the head complement rule, head specifier rule, and all those things, which will automatically take care of these things. So we don't need to provide any rules. All we have needed to handle this new phenomenon was a new value for the feature form, right? That is it. We had to just give form value it and new form value for that as a finite somewhere, right? Where is it? Yeah, form value here, form value, yeah, finite. So we need to only give form value. Only that is taken care of now. There, it, and extraposition with the lexical rule.